hard and she never know I love her to escape. And bones are thrown, sticks and stones, just to let you validate your message to me. Oh, you know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on my feet. You know my beat is concrete. Just breathe, stay on the feet.
Good evening, everyone. Ding, ding, ding. Round 3. We are in for another away days, and welcome everyone to the chat tonight. Seems like we're never ending, Richie. It's like we're constantly on shows and streams all the time. How are you? Anyway?
Still ill, mate. Still ill. The whole family's down with it. Seriously, mate. I'm sitting here in my freaking job and Botman's with this. I just took my top off before to go on, man.
Brilliant. Hey, when it needs must, when unwell and getting into the winter months.
Well, I had to because at the end of the day, Chris's lipstick supply had ran out, so he couldn't come on, so I had to start in. So
very true. Very true. It's always interesting that if we're like a minute late to the show, it's always like, Chris, sorting out his Avon. What's he doing? It's always
it's either that or Dan's doing his hair or you're getting a brandy. It's always something, isn't it?
I'm always getting a brandy. Look, I'm not even topped up yet, but I will in it just a second. But look, welcome everyone to the chat. Great to have you in there. Obviously, the chatters are all streaming in right now, and it's great to have you with us. And look, it's obviously been a really, really busy week. And of course, we had our fantastic review yesterday on the great win against Everton. And, if you haven't watched that, go and watch that back. It's a really, really good show. And it's lovely to kind of talk about us in such a positive way week in, week out. So fingers crossed we're able to do the same Sunday night. But look, fantastic goal from Miggy. Very well celebrated by all the boys in black and white, and it was a really, really fantastic victory, and it puts us in that top 6 conversation, and it continues to do so. But obviously, this week and in particular today, we've had some movement on one or two things that I want to get your opinion on before we get our guest out. In that, first and foremost, it has been confirmed. There's been rumours about it, but it's been confirmed that that we are going to Saudi Arabia on our warm weather tour, should we say, over the World Cup season. And we're going to be playing Al Halal Saudi club in the Saudi League. And that should be on the 8th of December, as it says on there. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Saudi trip, because as expected, like clockwork, all the same journalists that we know well have come out in their droves and thrown shade on the fact that we're going to Saudi. Look, like, lots of people have bitten back and have gone right at them. What are your thoughts on this? Do you even care at this point now, or are you just is it just kind of like immune to it all?
I think it's a bit of both, really. Isn't it? There's sometimes it's like you take it with a pinch of salt. There's other times where it's just someone might just say one thing. It's more like your Ollie Holtz and your Miguel Delaney and stuff like that. But when they make their comments, that's when you really bite, because I know that you're sick of the narrative going on, but some of it's like they're so contradictory as well at the same time. Yeah. And that's what annoys you. But with off of the fans and stuff, it's like, I think one of the things that I noticed most was off Man City fans. And I like that article, I don't know if you saw it there, about what Jamie Carragher said about, you shouldn't be, before Man City got took over, they were a mid-table side, really. Do you know what I mean? And then they've got the stage now where they've got the best manager, best player, the trophies, the best team in the league. So people are having a go because they're jealous in a way, and that's the same thing with us. And we're going to have to get used to it going forward. Obviously, if we're going to start replicating and have the success that they have. I think regards the trip to Saudi, the first thing I want to know, I want to know the thoughts of our good friend Al Walid, because I want to know who he's going to support in the match, because Al Hilal's his Saudi team, and obviously Newcastle's his adopted team through the takeover. So I'm intrigued on who he's going to be cheering on that day. So, but regards the actual trip itself, you look at back, for me, there was a lot more controversy over the January trip.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time, it was straight after the takeover within the space of 2 months. So for me, there was more controversy for that. For me, the way that Eddie Howe explained it was perfect. For football in terms, that's what all he's bothered about. Yes, okay, we'll go for a friendly and it's against the Saudi, probably the best team in Saudi Arabia. But what you've got to look at is, what did it do for the footballing side last season? Last season, you look at when we had that fantastic result against the run of play against Leeds, where we won 1-0. We went away. We had a few of the new signs, went away on the trip together. And then you look at what happened when we came back after that trip. That team were galvanized so much. After that, we'll speak to Marlo on this, because obviously last time we went down to the Spurs, we got something. That was one of the games after that trip. But we pretty much were picking up points everywhere. After that, we were together as a team, that unity and stuff like that. So if that's what this trip can be used as another bonding experience like that, where yes, you're going to have your internationals at the World Cup who were there, but you're going to have to still, because obviously we've got a lot of internationals in the squad, but there's only a few that are actually going to be in in Qatar.
Yeah.
That you're going to still have the majority of that squad together to bond and play and train and work on things going forward, because even though there's that month's break, you're still going to have that hectic Christmas festive schedule when you get back. So for me, yes, Eddie's going to get all the why you go to Saudi Arabia, this, that, and the other. What promotions are you going to be doing when you're about to do that sort of thing? Because obviously it's expected. But for me, and as he said, football-wise, it makes sense because of what happened in January.
Yeah, no, I think that's a more than fair point. For me, I couldn't care less. I don't react. I really don't. It's got to the point now, and I said that this was going to happen before. It'd be interesting to get Marlon's opinions on this as well at some point during the show. Is that I said this before? The more that they push and push and push, Newcastle fans, and in particular me as a Newcastle fan, the more that I'm going to resist, and the more that I resist on it, the less I care. And to be fair, let's be honest, I should care because of the natures around the Saudi Arabian. Saudi Arabia and all the human rights stuff. I don't know too much about it to be able to talk about it in detail. I should care, but the fact that they ram it down our throats and don't give any balance to their stories, it pulls me further away. So I just don't care anymore. I don't care. I want them to go to Saudi. I want them to go to Saudi all the time. I want us to wear the green and white colours all the time. I just want to be the resistance against those guys that constantly throw all that rubbish at us. But look, we can get into this another time. But I just wanted to get our initial thoughts. We could probably do a show of this, to be honest. But yeah, we'll leave it there. But on a more pleasant, happier note, very quickly before we get Marlon on, Sven Botman has been announced as being part of the initial provisional squad for the World Cup, along some very highly profiled names. Obviously, it is a bigger squad. It will be reduced further. But look, just a quick point from yourself, Richie. Fully deserved. Will he make the full squad?
It's thoroughly deserved, in my opinion. Now, if you put that squad back up, if you look at the other the centre halves that are really in the squad, you've got De Vrij there as well, and then obviously you've got Van Dijk, but you've got De Ligt, so he's in there with a good, core of centre halves, some of the best in Europe there. But what you've got to look at is which one of those are on form at the minute, which ones are keeping clean sheets, because Van Dijk hasn't had a fantastic start of the season. De Vries at Inter, the started as Inter tend to do, top sort of four in La Liga. And De Ligt, am I right in thinking De Ligt's now at Bayern as well? Is that right?
Yeah.
And Bayern have been a bit hit-y-missy this season as well. Do you know what I mean? Normally they're running away with the league already, but it's Union Berlin who are top of the Bundesliga at the minute. So if you're wanting to pick, one thing that we always say is you should be picking people on form, because that's what you want going into a tournament. And at this moment in time, yes, I know there was that hitting, furore about what Van Gaal, when he Botman with the last international break decided to take a break from the under-21 squad because he wanted to work on winning these players at Newcastle, which didn't go down apparently too well with Van Gaal, but obviously didn't go down too bad, because at the end of the day, he cemented his place in the Newcastle squad. They've now got the best defensive record in the Premier League. They've conceded the most clean sheets as well, and he's been part of that, an integral part of that as well. And as we've been saying this week, he's like a Rolls Royce at the back. Do you know what I mean? There's every aerial duel, apart from the first time against Calvert-Lewin, who, as someone put in our chat last night, is an athletic freak when it comes to aerial balls. That's the first person he's lost an aerial duel to all season. So if you're going to be picking on form for a centre half, he has to be going to that squad. And I hope he doesn't get penalised because he hasn't got the full international experience, because at the end of the day, he's got Champions League experience. He's won the league. He's won the Ligue 1 with Lille the past season on that. Now he's going into a squad now where he's got Premier League experience, which is renowned as the toughest league in the world, not just Europe, in the world. So what more can you ask for a young lad like that? You know what I mean? So I think he deserves to go.
I do. Best performing centre back out the lot. You're absolutely right. What was interesting for me is that Bruno Martins Indy isn't in that squad, and he's been in that squad constantly under Van Gaal, which says to me that he's taken Bruno Martins Indy's place. All those centre backs that you've mentioned are always still in the squad anyway. But Bruno Martins Indy is always in the squad too. So the fact that he's replaced him says to me that actually there is a potential for him to be as part of that full-time squad, and he's outperforming all of the other centre backs, so he should be considered. But I just wanted to have that note of congratulations, a more lighter note, should we say, with the fact that he's in that squad. But look, we're here to do the preview, and really looking forward to this one because it should make for an interesting one. And we are up against Tottenham next Sunday, 4:30 kickoff at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And you're right, last season wasn't a good trip, should we say, down there.
You say trip because you were there, that's why.
I was there, and this is why I'm not going again, because I wasn't sure what to expect. But of course,
so basically what you say before we get Marlo on is, it was your fault if we get something positive on Sunday that we didn't get anything last time because you were there.
No, because I've been there. I've been at White Hart Lane when we won the Jose Perez winner, when we won 2-1. I was there.
Yeah, but that was White Hart Lane.
Oh, okay, maybe. But let's win first, and then we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But look,
I agree with that one.
But look, it's as always when we talk about our previews, we have an opposition's view in it. I'm delighted, very much last minute, but really delighted to have him on, Marlo, from a view from the South Stand podcast and YouTube channel. Let's get him in. How you doing, Marlon?
I'm good, thank you. How are you both?
Is it Marlon? You all right?
I'm very good, very good.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on, Marlon. I know it was a bit of a last minute for because it was a new Spurs order. Owen he's joined us before, and he mentioned your name. And to be fair, massive big up to Owen for obviously putting us in touch and having those conversations. So great for you to join us to talk all things Spurs and Newcastle United. And I'm going to get straight into it because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, your start in the season has been a good one. You look at the table, third in the league, 7 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats. 23 points, same as Man City, albeit a game in hand. In touching distance of Arsenal at the top of the league.
Yeah.
How would you? We were talking off air slightly, so I'm interested to know how you view your season so far.
So our season so far has been, when you look at the table, and if you told someone who didn't watch the Premier League, how do you think Spurs are doing? You'd probably go, actually, they're probably doing all right. But if you actually look at our performances, if you look at everything else going on behind the scenes, it's not been the best. Like, Spurs have been quite boring to watch. even as fans, we're not, you know, we know that we've got a decent squad, and we probably should be playing better football, but the football is boring. And that's the one thing at the moment that most Spurs fans would complain about. But I think the biggest thing for us right now is the team sitting at the top of the league. I think that annoys us a lot more, because if you had said to us at the beginning of the season, after 11 games, we'll be sitting on the same points as Man City, you know, would be right up there. We'd be sitting there laughing, going, yeah, we'll be happy with that. But just because of the way the Gooners have started, it's literally annoyed us, and we're literally moaning about everything. It is so split. But up until the Man United game, it was our best start to a Premier League season. But now, you know, and that's the weirdest scenario. It was our best start up until that game. And then obviously now, I think we're now 3 points worse off than we were under Jose, which is concerning because we've been in this situation before. So Sunday's game is so important for us right now. And I think, especially after our showing on Wednesday, if we don't get it right on Sunday, I think a lot of Spurs fans are going to be start calling for Conte's head.
Wow.
That's how far it's getting.
Do you think that's mainly because of the football he's playing, though, Marlon?
Yeah, and when I look at it, I think actually we've been playing this football since Jose Mourinho. When Jose Mourinho, well, not even that, the last 9 months of Poch, we were playing this football, and it just hasn't stopped. It just seems to be the cycle of managers we seem to be getting are playing exactly the same. The only difference with Conte is that actually he's got us defending better, and our defenders are not great. If you were to ask me right now, would I take Newcastle's centre backs or would I take Spurs'? Apart from Romero, I'll take Newcastle all day long. I can't believe that Spurs weren't in for Botman. Like literally watching him the last couple of weeks, and when you lot were saying, I'm jealous. I'm actually jealous because it's not like a player it weren't in reach. It wasn't, and he wasn't greatly that expensive either. He has been excellent for Newcastle, and at this moment, I'd even take Dan Burn. That is exactly where Spurs are at the moment with our defense. It's just letting us down, but at the same time, it's how many chances we're conceding. Like Man United, the most chances they had was on Wednesday against us, and at some point, your defense is going to falter. And we, ever since Eric Dyer has got the England call up, he's just gone off the boil, and that's the thing. When you look at Ben Davies and Eric Dyer, when Conte first came in, they were overachieving. They were completely overachieving last season, and not replacing them with Champions League quality centre backs is going to cost us, and we can see it. And I think what we're scared of is that Arsenal might end up winning the league, and the way Newcastle are playing at the moment, it's kind of, if we don't get our ideas up with the transfers, Newcastle will be taking over us as well in the next couple of years as well, if not this year. And that's the worrying thing for Spurs fans right now, because we're in that medium place where if you've seen United the way they were playing on Wednesday, Chelsea have just changed manager. Our top 4 places up is a threat. And then at the end of the day, if Newcastle keep carrying on what you guys are doing at the moment, one loss, I know there's a few draws thrown in there, but the form just seems to have turned around. We could lose that. It could become a top 7, and that's what we're scared of at the moment.
Well, you're not the only one to say that, Marlon, because your manager was talking about that today in his press conference and actually said that he sees Newcastle as a team that are, in his words, going to be very dangerous in the future, and that we're and he was talking about we're as in the collective, not just Tottenham, but a lot of the teams that are up there, they're going to have to be looking out for Newcastle moving forward, because I think it's now getting to the point where all of those that traditional top 6 are looking at Newcastle as a genuine threat and a threat to that top 6 cycle, and it will eventually become a top 7. But I just want to rewind slightly, because obviously you talked about your run up until the Man United game. Obviously we were playing ourselves Wednesday night, so there probably wasn't as much of a focus on your game at Old Trafford from a Newcastle perspective. But what was it that made it so bad? Because I've heard pundits talking about that's Man United's best performance in years. Best performance I've seen, in a long time. Best performance of the season. But what was it that made them play so well? But what was it that you guys didn't do that was made you look so bad?
So Spurs just have this thing, and it's been all season. Like when we play top 6 sides away, we put the handbrake on, and the tactics will. it's on Conte. For once, this is the first time we all sit there and go, it was on Conte. He played the formation that we've probably been screaming for the last couple of weeks, and there was no Emerson Royale. Those were the two things that Spurs have been crying at. Like every Spurs fan have been crying, let's get Basuma in there. Let's make sure Royale is not playing because he isn't great going forward. So we had all of that, and we were going to Old Trafford, especially after the way we played against Everton in the second half. We thought, here we go. But it just all seemed to they didn't want to play. They couldn't pass the ball to each other. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. And then what made it worse is that Man United were pressing us so high at the top, we were just making mistakes, and they were just giving the ball back to them. And it was a case of, if you watched Man United against the top six sides this year, they've struggled. And even against Arsenal when they won, they struggled. So it's just been, I don't know if it's a mentality thing, I don't know if it's a tactic thing, but it's been a major issue when any top six side away ground we go to, apart from Man City, funny enough, we just can't play. And we just seem to just crash and burn. But then if you look at our home form, we've won all our home games this year. So, and that's why we're looking at Sunday. A lot of us are a bit worried if you come there and get a draw, or, if you come out with some result, I think a lot of us Spurs fans are going to be looking at this season going, where do we go from here? And I know we're only like 12 games in, but we're kind of like, we don't know where we're going at the moment. And I think we all thought that we'd be taking that next step with Conte. And I think for a lot of us, reality hit home how bad it still is at Spurs.
Marlo, just a quick one while we're talking about the Man United game the other day. Obviously, we've played them at Old Trafford 3 days before. We managed to get a good battle and draw down there. Now, we've actually got a lad that we know quite well who's based in the Northeast, who's a Man United fan through Jamie. And I was speaking to him after the game, and I wanted to know what his opinions were on both of the opposition from his point of view. Yeah. What he thought of Newcastle compared to Spurs. And he actually said that Newcastle were hands down the better opposition that he'd seen, probably one of the best ones he'd seen at Old Trafford this season. Now, would you have said that the Spurs were just downright awful in themselves, or was it that Man United were good? Because obviously we were watching the Everton game, so we can't really comment on Man United's performance. So obviously it's nice to get your opinion on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that I think Ten Hag got his tactics spot on, and it was probably one of them things where the players were actually playing for the manager. And I think especially after the result they had against you guys, they had to respond. And I think we just got in the way. And because Conte kind of went there when I want to get a point, and the players just didn't get that memo. If there was no desire from Spurs players, there was nothing. And that's why it's kind of a scenario when we're going to go into Sunday. I think the Spurs players will respond, but Man United were that good as well. And I think the whole Ronaldo situation as well, because he played over the weekend as well, just didn't help them. And having Rashford back up front was very, very key, even though he missed a lot of chances. And it probably could have been 5 or 6 if it wasn't for Lloris. But I think with Newcastle, Eddie Howe didn't go with the handbrake on. He went there and went, I've got to play our game, otherwise Man United are going to pick us off. Where Conte went there and went, I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to do exactly what I did against Arsenal. I'm going to do exactly what I tried to do against Chelsea. And it just didn't work. It just tactically just didn't work.
Yeah. Pete, I'm just going to talk about tactics there briefly. Do you find Conte as like a slightly younger version of Benitez? Because obviously we've been there and done that, where we were used to parking the bus but getting results when he was there. Do you know what I mean? And obviously with a really poor squad. So do you see the similarities in the two coaches there, the styles and stuff?
Yeah, there is a little bit of a similar style in terms of they do start from the back in terms of the way they set their teams up. So they want their teams to be defensively solid to begin with, and then they build from that. What I would say is that Conte's teams are more progressive. They do like to get forward and attack more, whereas Benitez is quite happy to sit for 90 minutes and maybe only get 1 or 2 chances and and hope that they take them. Conte's not like that. He has a very workman-like team, particularly with wing backs. He likes to get his wing backs forward and into the box. He seems more of an attacking minded coach, and you've seen that for all the teams that he gets through. But similarities definitely from the fact that he starts from the back. He makes sure his defensive unit is very, very solid. Now you look at your three players that tends to play there, and like I say, Richie's right. We'll talk tactics in a bit, but you look at your three players. At the moment, you brought Dyer in from the cold. He looked like he was in from the cold. He was just.
I wish we never.
Brought him back in. He's front and centre. You got Romero left. And then you've got Longley sometimes that plays on the left of that back three. And they're not the most flamboyant of centre-backs. Romero is a top centre-back, no doubt about it. But the others don't really catch the eye, or when you hear them, they don't really stand out. But he's made you very, very solid in the way in which you defend. Can be exploited, but mostly solid. But after that is where... is probably his failings, and this is where he's maybe not strengthened in the right areas. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. What do you think, Richie, on that? Do you agree that they are slightly similar, or do you think they are very much exactly the same?
I don't know, because I think that the different in comparison. Obviously, you're saying that Conte is a little bit more attacking. But is that purely down to the personnel? Because you go back to when Rafa was in charge of Newcastle, we didn't have the personnel. So did it look like we were more defensive because we just didn't have the players? We were relying on Rondon up front, who can't even get a game for Everton now, who are struggling to score goals. So you start to look at that sort of thing as well.
And you know what? To a point, that's where I'd agree with you. But then I throw in Everton on that. And that Everton had Richarlison, they had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, they had Damari Gray, they had better attacking players than we did, and they performed worse than we did under Newcastle. That's the reality, and that's why I say he's even more of a defensive-minded man.
But the thing is, I could throw that back at you and say they've still got Damari Gray, they've got Rondon, they've still got Calvert-Lewin, and they still can't score. Lampard, so it makes no difference.
To be fair, Benitez did start off well last year. Benitez did start off well, and it was only the injury to Calvert-Lewin where he's then started to go really defensive with Everton, and they just couldn't get a result. So, because you got to remember, I think their first 4 games last year, they were unbeaten, and everyone thought, he's got them going. And then all of a sudden, the results just went as soon as Calvert-Lewin's not there, and that's all they've got. They've got nothing else.
Yeah. Well, we saw that Wednesday night. Yeah. Botman had Calvert-Lewin in his pocket. He won a couple of headers. Fair play to Calvert-Lewin, but that's all he did in the 70, 75 minutes he was on, and there was nothing else after that because we kept him very, very quiet. But yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation, and to be fair, there are points either way. And to be fair, Richie made a great point because they can't score, they can't hit a bar door even now Benitez is gone. But I would argue with Richarlison it was probably slightly different because he did score important goals that keep them in the league, unfortunately, from my perspective. But look, we won't go on.
Perspective, not just yours, Pete.
Yeah, definitely not just mine. But look, we won't talk about Everton anymore. We beat them. We both beat them. Marlo and Anders have wiped the floor with them. We'll move them to the side for now. But look, we've talked about Conte, we've talked about the style of play from various things. I want to talk about actually a player that we just mentioned, and we'll talk about a few of them. Really, you've made a few signings in the summer. You bought the likes of Richarlison in, Basuma from Brighton. Which I know the Tottenham fans were really excited about that signing coming in. Perisic has come through the door as well. Those three just as kind of like those three kind of just in isolation with regards to your signings. How were you feeling at the end of the transfer window when those three were through the door? Were you pleased with your business, and how have they settled into the club?
We were pleased at first because obviously we made a lot of them quite early on as well.
Yeah,
I think Conte mentioned this as well. As soon as he got to the end, we did all the strengthening at the beginning. It was all looking good, but then our rivals strengthened and got better as well. And then we needed to dip into the market because there were still certain positions that we just hadn't covered. Like I said, centre back, we hadn't brought in an attacking midfielder. Right wing back situation is a massive problem for us at the moment. It's probably our weakest area. But as for the players, yeah, Richarlison's probably made the biggest impact so far out of all of them. He's even though the last few games, where to be honest with him, he's been playing on the right, and it's kind of, you can blatantly see he's not comfortable there. He either likes playing through the middle or coming in off the left. Unfortunately, let's be honest, he's not going to take Kane or Son's place unless it's really something major. And we've had no Kulusevski the last few weeks as well. So we've just been fitting him in just to get him in. Perisic, again, quality on the ball, gives us a lot. But the problem is, and I don't know if this is an ongoing thing, him and Son just haven't clicked. And it's, if you look at Son's form, all these goals have come when Sessegnon's been playing, not when Perisic has been playing. So it's a bit of concern that you've got two players there that, I think the last week against Everton, they played well together. But again, Son fired blanks. He wasn't playing at his best. So the signings were good. The signings were, they were decent. But it was like, it started as a 9 out of 10. And then as soon as the window closed, it went to about 4 or 5 out of 10. And especially now that we've got injuries, you can blatantly see we're putting like 6 defenders on the bench or 6 defensive-minded players on the bench. And we've got, well, until Lucas came back the other day, we had one player that Conte didn't even wanted to get rid of. But again, because there was no replacement coming for him, couldn't get him out the door. And then had to use him in a Champions League game, and he kept giving the ball away. And you can just understand. And with all our signings, as Conte said, until they're tactically ready, he'll bring them in. And Basuma's been a prime example of this, because we were calling out for Basuma weeks on weeks on weeks on weeks. First start, played terrible. Again, kept him out the team, came on a few times, and that's when we started crying out for the 5-3-2, because he came on, played well. Got to Wednesday, again, started, awful. But I think it's more down to Conte's tactics with Basuma more than anything else, because under Potter, he was allowed to attack. In a Conte system, we haven't got the players to do that. And that's the biggest issue right now. We just don't have Conte players. And until we get Conte players, Conte's going to play this way, because it worked for him last season.
But let's stick to that. And we'll continue that conversation, because you mentioned about Conte players. How long does Conte continue in this manner? Yeah, I don't want to throw negativity your way, because I know Tottenham fans respond like that, but it's a reality. Conte doesn't stay at clubs very long. 3 years maximum. 3 years maximum. And normally within that 3 years, maybe after a year or so, he's picking up a trophy or two in order to prolong that stay at a club. It hasn't happened yet, when it was talked about as a guarantee from some sections of Tottenham fans. At what point does he turn around? Because it was close to leaving in the summer, but then you invested, so he's continued. If he doesn't then invest again, and let's be honest, Daniel Levy is not one of those that continually pumps money into.
Yeah,
you know this, Marlo.
We know this. Yeah,
and that if there comes to January and Conte goes, I want more money, I want to improve, I want to buy this player, and he says no, or he gets to next summer and he's not being given the sort of money that you've had this season, at what point does he then walk out the club? From your perspective, you've obviously reacted to me saying that. Is that something that's running through your mind, that you're worried about him potentially just going, you know what, enough's enough, I'm out?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on with Conte at the moment, and I think that's the biggest issue. Like, I know we're sitting there moaning about the football and everything else, but no Spurs fan, I'd say 90% of the Spurs fans want him to stay. But our biggest worry right now is that he hasn't signed the contract. His contract runs out at the end of the season, and he's free to walk anywhere. There's obviously been the Juve rumours, but the only positive that comes out of that is that he doesn't get on with the chairman at Juve. He's openly, publicly said before, in previous newspaper reports, him and the chairman just don't get along. So it's likely that Juventus will have to go for a Tuchel or something like that unless the chairman leaves. So it's not a case of that. But I think what Conte is waiting for, he's waiting to see the situations of Real Madrid, Barcelona, and like what he did to us when he joined us. He waited to see if the big clubs will come in for him before he then decided to come join Spurs. So our biggest worry right now is that if Daniel Levy does not back him in January, because we're going to see where we are in the next 5 weeks, we're going to see where we are. The World Cup's going to happen, and then it's going to be the transfer windows open. and we need players. We're not going to sit there like our four. If I said to you right now, Conte has got us in a false position. We should not be where we are. We shouldn't be third, and that's the way to put it. But with Conte, it's a case of until he signs that contract, every Spurs fan is worried because the managers that we probably would go after, one's at Newcastle, one's just joined Chelsea. So it's kind of, where do we go from there? And where do we go from Conte is the biggest question for a lot of Spurs fans. It's like, where do we go from Conte? There's no world-class manager is going to join us, especially if Conte don't win a trophy. Everyone's going to come and join Spurs to go, you get paid a lot of money and you get sacked at the end of it. And you don't even have to win anything. You just have to make top four. And that's the target. And for a lot of Spurs fans, what's the point of being in the Champions League if you're not going to sign the Champions League quality type of players to play in it? And that's Spurs' biggest gripe right now. Because if you look at our squad, half of them were playing in the Conference League and we couldn't even qualify out of that. So look at us now. And the other question comes into it is, if Conte doesn't stay, Kane's got 2 years left. Does he stay? And that's the other biggest issue. We've got a Kane contract right now, which is running down. And at the end of the day, does he then consider buying now? Because obviously Man City have got Haaland. So there's so many things.
Is it 2 years at the end of this season that he's got left? Or is it 1 year at the end of
I can't remember if it's 2 years at the end of this season or it's 1 year after this season, but he hasn't got long.
I've got a feeling, you know.
I thought it was one, because wasn't it 3 years where Man City were after the year before? Yeah. So obviously this would be 2 years at the start of this season.
Yeah, and it was last year, and he'd have turned 30 by then.
It's Conte or bust. Yeah, it's Conte or bust for Kane. Where Son's already on a long-term contract. We lose Kane, and then you've got another player to replace. And
I'll throw that back at you though. You said that who would take over at Spurs, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there was links, which was ludicrous today, that Villa might even think of getting Pochettino, who obviously was loved by Spurs fans while you had him in charge.
Yeah, still is.
As I said, it probably still is. Would you take him back? Because obviously he had a good relationship with a lot of the squad that's already there, had a fantastic relationship with the man you've just said would consider possibly leaving. Yeah. But then the other name you could possibly throw in there who's free, who's technically classed as, I think you have to say he is a world-class manager, is just left another London rival in Chelsea and Thomas Tuchel. Would you consider any of them if Conte was to bite the bullet and think, well, I can't work under Daniel Levy, like a lot of managers can't, because he does promise he will, but then never delivers.
Of course. And the fact that you guys are saying that says a lot, because you guys are not, if everyone is saying that, it's so weird because everyone else tells us this. There's a lot of Spurs fans that think this, but there'll be a lot of Spurs fans will tell you something completely different about Daniel Levy and be like, what he's done for the club is great and all this and the other. But Daniel Levy is one of them guys who doesn't take enough risks on the football pitch. He'll take it off the field, right? He'll go and pay how much for the grass to make sure that's all doing great, so you get the NFL and all that kind of coming in. But if it means paying that extra £5 or £10 million for a player that he doesn't, he feels like, no, I can get it cheaper, he won't do it. And that's always going to be the biggest issue. And we had problems this summer where he took so long just to sign Jed Spence. Like, that is Daniel Levy all over. But as you said, with Pochettino, I'm one of them people, I don't want him back. If you saw the last 9 months, that Champions League final just papered over the cracks. We literally couldn't win away. We were playing the same football that we're playing now, if not worse. And it all went to pot. I wouldn't understand why Poch would want to come back unless he wants another big payoff, because I can't see things changing. But with Tuchel, a very good point. It's probably quite similar to the football and that Conte's playing. And if you're going to go down the same route, you might as well just stick to it. But again, it's another ex-Chelsea manager. How many more do we need? We had Andre Villas-Boas, we've had Jose Mourinho, Conte now. And it just seems to be that he just likes employing these old Chelsea managers because he thinks they're going to win something. But until Daniel Levy steps away from the club, we're not winning anything. We're just not going to do it. Financially, we're secure, but we're just not going to win anything.
Interesting. Very interesting. It's a great discussion about that. And look, we'll dig a little bit more into that. But I just want to say thank you. We've got 70 plus in the chat tonight watching. Thank you for your comments at the moment. If you haven't liked already, like the show, just click that thumbs up. And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button and join and be a part of the Lodi family. And Solo, welcome Solo to the show, into the channel, asking how to become a member. As you can see on the screen, you can only become a member on a laptop. Okay, you can't do it over your phone. So on a laptop, it gives you the option to become a member. You click the blue button where it says join, $1.99 a month. You put in your own personal details, and then you're in. So it's really, really simple. Takes no more than 5 minutes to do. So if you get a chance, do that and become part of the Lodi family. That is for sure. So welcome to you, Solo, and anyone else that's joined the chat for the first time. Now, is there a couple of questions in there, Richie, that we can throw Marlon's way before we move on to the next section?
Yeah, I'll see which ones we've got. This is right. The first one's off Johnny 2 for Life, right? And he wants to know, not on a match day, but within a 1 mile radius of both clubs, which club shirts do you see the most, Arsenal or Spurs? Honest answer, please.
Oh, great question.
Do you know what? It's quite funny because actually where Tottenham is as a stadium, there's a lot of Arsenal fans around there. There's just a lot of fans. A lot of Tottenham fans are not directly from London. So you'll find a lot of Arsenal fans, even on match day, are wearing Arsenal shirts. So there is a lot more Arsenal shirts. I'm not going to lie. It is what it is. And they're the social, as I call them, they're the social media kings. If you were to put out a negative tweet about Arsenal, even on your channel, you will see the whole list of Arsenal fans just find it and they'll be coming at you. But yeah, within the one, I'd probably say Arsenal, they probably won't. They are, they've had the Wenger years. And obviously a lot of us, when we were younger, those were the years that a lot of people remember. So it was either Man United or Arsenal that the two teams were to support. So yeah, Arsenal probably within a mile radius, especially in London, it's probably Arsenal.
Okay, he's got another fantastic follow-up question as well. And he says, question for Marlo, how far will Spurs get in the Champions League this season? And secondly, also, will Spurs make the top 4 this season? Will you finish above Arsenal too?
So, I don't know if I want to put my neck on the line for one of those questions.
As Peter, that has shown itself, that one question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So regarding Champions League, I think we will make it through at least to the last 16. And then we'll, Conte's Champions League record, by the way, is awful. Absolutely awful. So if we even make it out of the group, I think he's done one of his best performances will be with Spurs. So, we haven't done great in the Champions. Well, we haven't done great. Our top players haven't performed in the Champions League, but we've got some good results. Will we make top 4? We've got a squad for top 4, I'd say. What we bought in the summer, we had a squad that was built for top 4. And I think at this present moment, if you're going to ask me, I still think we'll make it, even after our terrible performances. I think we'll lose to Liverpool away. We might get a draw, and we'll probably lose to City away, or we might win. City's a difficult one, but I think our home form is that we've got a lot of the top 6 sides at home in the second part of the season, and we play a lot of the top teams at home. And if we keep up this good form like we did last year, I think we'll make top 4. And as for the last question, it's Arteta, isn't it? At the end of the day, and seeing what happens if you watch the Amazon documentary, and you watch, the last 3 games, Arsenal should never have done that. They should never have ever. They were 7 points ahead, and they should never have allowed us to get back in that spot, but they allowed it. And I think everyone is Arsenal playing well. I'll openly admit they are playing well, but I know it's going to take a Thomas Partey injury for it to all collapse. And that's the biggest player they've got, and he's bound to get injured because he does every year. And every year when he gets injured, they collapse as a team.
I just wanted to say, Pete, did we get a thank you off Marlo at the start of the show for helping them qualify for top 4 this season?
I was going to say, that was great. It's like telepathy. We're on the right lines here, because
do you know what?
Hold on, Arsenal let you in. They didn't let you in. We smashed the doors down at St. James's Park on a Monday evening.
But you're also, do you know what? I would have thanked you a couple of weeks ago, but actually, looking at the bigger picture, us making Champions League meant we signed less players. So I don't think you helped us out, really. And it meant Arsenal went and signed all them players. So I don't know which one who ended up getting the better end of the deal out of it.
All I'll say to that, Marlo, is if you want to give up the Champions League position and hand it to us, we'll take it. We'll take it all day long.
Do you know what? All I'm going to say is once you lot make the Champions League, oh my God, the amount of players that you guys will be able to bring in and everything like that. I think that's the only thing stopping Newcastle right now. And actually, to be honest, I'm quite glad the way you guys have done things this summer. I think it's been quite impressive. And I think Eddie Howe and the board need a lot of praise because you haven't gone out and bought the world-class players that everyone expected you to. Actually, you've kept to Eddie Howe's theory. You bought established Premier League players in January that kept you up and actually done so well. They were able to come and play this season as well. And then you've just done things the right way. You haven't gone and splashed it. And as you guys were pointing out earlier, it's jealousy at the moment. And that's all it is. And like when it comes to Spurs fans and when we talk about Newcastle, you can tell we're jealous, but we won't say it. We go, no, we've got a good thing going on, but we know deep down we're worried because Daniel Levy will not try and compete with Newcastle or City, not even Liverpool, because even though Jurgen Klopp sits there and goes, we can't compete with them. I'm sorry, how much did Josh Striker cost in the summer? Okay. So
exactly. You're absolutely right, Marlon. And what you've just said is exactly what all Newcastle fans have been thinking. Is that like we heard that last week going, what? Darwin Núñez? We wanted Darwin Núñez. Me and Richie know about that more than anyone because we were talking about Darwin Núñez back in January 2021 because we saw him as and Newcastle saw him as a potential.
Yeah.
We were the first in line to sign Darwin Núñez. And the more he performed in the Champions League, the more interest he got. Liverpool, Man United. Yeah. So what happened? The price went up. We probably would have got Darwin Núñez for about the same price that we signed Alexander Isak for, around the 60 million mark.
Yeah.
But they came in and they paid the best part of 100 million euros to get him into the club. How he can sit there and point the finger at Newcastle United is a joke. But what it is, it's through fear.
Yeah.
Through fear for his club and through fear of his own job. Because he's been held this messiah as a manager that's turned around Liverpool, fair play to him. But now he's in a position where he's hit his heights. For me, Liverpool will either stay or drop. Yeah. They won't get any higher than what they are. They've reached their peak already. And he knows it. And so what he's doing to deflect it is point to other clubs and point to other people. So he'll point it at Man City, at Newcastle. We're easy targets. He will start doing it at Chelsea and at Tottenham before long, because at Man United, because it's the easy thing to do in order to continue to keep his reputation up there. The reality is that his players that he's kind of put his cotton wool around for so many years is now starting to fade. So I'm really glad that you made that point, and you see it very similar from a Tottenham perspective. But I want to go back to the point that you made before we go on to our next section. Is that you touched on Newcastle there, and you've said you've been impressed with how Newcastle have done their business, and how they've gone about things. From an honest position, from the Tottenham perspective, speaking to other like-minded fans, like you say, from a Tottenham point of view, what is the feeling around Newcastle United at this moment in time?
Fear. I think it is fear. I think it's how we all felt when there was only a top four. I think if you go back to then, everyone was saying Spurs ain't going to do it. Spurs ain't going to break it. Manchester City, they've got all this money, but again, Chelsea, it was just about the top four. And they couldn't accept Man City getting into it. So then they created the top six. Because Spurs were doing well at the time. And then Pochettino came along and just seemed to coincide with Man City doing well. And it is fear of making it a top seven. If not, there'll be a club falling out of it. And at this present moment, it probably will be Spurs. And I think that's our biggest fear, because it's the whole Daniel Levy effect. You look at the way we do business. If you've got Arsenal who are willing to spend the cash, you've got Liverpool, depending on, they'll probably go, the 7-year itch, as they call it with Klopp. Manchester United will always try and be there and thereabouts. They'll always spend money. But Spurs try and do it smartly. we haven't been smart about our transfers for about a good 5-6 years. And that's our biggest worry. And we keep going through managers and managers and managers. And that's our biggest problem. Like, we look at Newcastle right now, and let's be honest, all of us thought Eddie Howe had gone in the summer. We thought a big name was going to come in. But the owners have looked at it, and you can tell that they've gone, actually, we don't need to do things quick. I think it was the first interview that was done with, I've forgotten the name, Stradley, when she first came in. And she went, it's not straight now. It's a 5-year plan. And we were like, nah, you ain't going to keep to that. But actually, the fact they kept Eddie Howe and went, you know what, we trust you. We can see what you're trying to do. Let's go with it. And they have done. And just seeing the last few weeks where Newcastle suddenly hit a switch and turned it on, it's one of them. I did want to see it, but when you look at the whole bigger picture, it's good to see.
Yeah. And
that's exactly how we didn't want the owners to come in and be spending the cash and, playing for this player and making it a Man City Newcastle league. I think that was the biggest fear. But as long as you guys keep doing what you're doing, you don't overpay. Like Manchester City have never, until Haaland, they never overpaid for a player. I think it was Kevin De Bruyne.
To be fair, Marlo, I don't think they overpaid for Haaland either.
No, and this is the thing. Kevin De Bruyne was their biggest signing for years, and that was like 50-odd million. But yes, they spent a lot of money to do it. When they went and built a whole new defence for Pep. But it does take time, and I think that's the key thing right now, is that actually Newcastle are not trying to. They're just bordering. I think the achievement for Newcastle this year would be get into Europe, try and get that down, try and get playing Thursday, Sunday out first, get to see how you can rotate the squad, learn it. And I think once you get that and pass that test, Newcastle might be onto big things. And I think that's the worry for the rest of the Premier League. We're all worried. I think Spurs and Arsenal are probably the most worried, because at the end of the day, we're the two clubs that can't compete at all because of London and everything like that. And you saw what Chelsea done in the summer. He's playing Football Manager right now. So Spurs and Arsenal are the two teams that are more worried than anybody.
I think Liverpool are actually.
It depends on Liverpool, because Liverpool are one of them clubs that can always attract players. I think the problem they've got right now is that Klopp's, as he did at Dortmund, he's got a 7-year cycle, and he now needs to recycle his squad and start again. And I think you're right in the sense of it's going to take him another few years, and he's got to go out and buy the players. They went and bought Diaz, they've got Nunez, but Salah's next. Salah's on he's getting old now. So their whole midfield, their whole midfield needs changing up. I think that's their biggest problem right now, is that their midfield is the biggest worry. And once they can sort that out, but again, if you go back to when Klopp first took over, we all told him he needed a goalkeeper, he needed a centre-back, and then he went and bought 2 most expensive players he could. Again, for the person who couldn't compete with those two, went and bought a £70 million goalkeeper and a £75 million centre-back in a market that was, at the time, not as expensive, but he went out and bought it. So you just have to look at it and go, I think you're right, Liverpool might be in it, but I think they'll all come back. Liverpool always come back. I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
Do you know what, I'll just follow on from, because obviously you said it before. You've got Liverpool in a few weeks' time.
Yes.
We played them. We played it's about 6 weeks ago now, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah.
And yes, it's been our only defeat of the season, which it shouldn't have been. Obviously, Yeah. And I thought they were bang average, if I'm honest with you. I wasn't impressed with them at all. And I believe you're right. Their midfield is their weak point at the moment. They've got no freshness in there. It's all legs, and there's just nothing there. I believe your midfield is at the minute, if you can get Bentancur, Højbjerg, and Basuma working together, I think those 3 will win that game, or at least get you something out of that at Anfield, in my opinion, anyway.
Well, I think it's going to be and that's why I think for us Spurs fans, this game on Sunday is so key, because it's likely that we're going to see the same 3 again. And if they play anything like they did last week in that second half, I honestly think we'll win the game, because there's no stopping it. Because obviously we've got, let's be honest, 2 strikers up front that on their day will finish anything. And Kane will finish anything on. He's tipped up there with Lewandowski's and stuff like that. It's just that he hasn't won anything. But yeah, I completely agree with you. If he can get those 3 working, it's going to be every team will struggle against us. Well, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Away from home, we're a different animal.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll find out on Sunday if all teams will struggle with I just want to comment on a couple of things before we move on, Pete. Mark's just put on today. I've heard a lot of Spurs fans complain about the style of play. Just to let you know, Mark, we actually covered that earlier on in the show. So go back, have a rewind at your leisure, and obviously Marlo will fill you with what he actually thinks on that. I also want to Johnny Toon for Life's actually really, really impressed with you as a guest, Marlon, because you've answered his questions fantastic. He says, one honest and good lad, Marlon is a terrific guest who knows his stuff, and not just about Spurs. The lad speaks well. So to tell you what, to get your dues off Johnny Toon for Life, that's a good. Really, really.
I'm honoured. I'm honoured.
Honestly, Richie's right. It's well earned, and you know what? He's not the only one. I've starred a few from a number of others. Lisa, I'll just click on them now because I've got them. Lisa is said one of our mods. Isn't it so refreshing hearing an opposition team fan be so honest? Marlon is a great guest. 100% agree. Yano as well. Articulate, polite, honest, insightful, intelligent. How come you're not a Newcastle fan?
Too far for me.
Yeah. And Chris Dawson, welcome, Chris. I've not seen you in the chat before, Chris. If you're not a subscriber, click that subscribe button and click the likes. Great to have you on as well. It's put, top bloke as well. With regards to,
I think one thing we've got to do though, Pete. I think we do have to turn around and say is, will he be this honest on Sunday night if he was to do our review show with us? If the result didn't go his way,
I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm going to say yes. But we could all be surprised potentially.
I'll be upset, but I'd still talk on it. Look, at the end of the day, when it comes to Spurs, I'm quite realistic, and I think that's why since I've started doing this YouTube thing, a lot of people have been going, I wasn't expecting that from you, but I don't overhype Tottenham because I know where we're at, and that's the main thing. If I overhype Spurs like some fans do, we don't deserve to be there. What makes you think we can be there, right? There's certain things at the club we haven't done, and until we get it right on the pitch, that's when I'll become an arrogant person. If we started winning league and trophies, Champions League, you'll see a totally different me. But you have to be realistic, and it's not. A lot of Spurs fans only watch Spurs as well. They won't watch other teams. And I love watching the Premier League. It's a great advert for for England, full stop. And you have to look at other teams and what they're doing. And I remember when I was younger, I had one mate who was a Newcastle fan. Always asked him why. Kevin Keegan days. So obviously when we were younger, when it was that age, Newcastle were better than us. That's when you got the Esprit, the Shearers and stuff like that, and we were losing to Newcastle like every time he played us. But then obviously when we got to teenagers, things suddenly turned. So I've always taken a slight interest in Newcastle because of him. So that's the only reason why, to be honest. I know quite a bit. So I've always the only time I actually message him now is when we play each other. So again, if we win on Sunday, I'll be texting him going, here we go, another win.
Fair play.
Just before we go, because I know what's coming up here, I just want to give a shout out to, obviously, we mentioned Solo. You mentioned Solo before in the chat when he wanted to know how to join. He actually went out and spent the time. He went and got the laptop out, and he's became a so much appreciated, mate. We fantastic that you decided to not just subscribe to the channel, but you've actually become a member as well. And he did actually put that as a comment afterwards. This has always been my favourite £2 hashtag load it back. So it's much appreciated, Solo. We're glad you love the channel and the content. And back over to you, Pete.
No, absolutely spot on. Top man. Look, it's been a great chat. I'm mindful of time. Just before we go into our next section, Marlon, are you okay to hang on for a little bit?
Yeah, hang on for a bit. Yeah.
We've got a couple of things I want to go through with tactics as well. I want to get your views on one or two things. But of course, as always, we can't move to the next section without having a few stats. You know what that means.
Evening, lads.
Even Keith, you all right?
Good evening,
Not so
Keith.
bad. Good to see you all.
Evening.
And like magic, he appears always. Keith, Double O Stato, how's things?
Yeah, we're all good, thanks. Third appearance in a week. I don't know if we're coming or going here. You know, it's gone a bit crazy in the football season, hasn't it?
It has, definitely. But look, you know what? It's been a great show so far, and so many have said it in the chat. Been fantastic to have Marlon on and get your opinions. And I know you've been in the chat yourself. You've been commenting on one or two things as well. It's been really insightful. So, but of course, we're getting down to the match day, and as always, I know you've got some stats ready for us. So hopefully, there's some good ones there, some nuggets that we can pick out from a Newcastle perspective. But what have you got for us this week?
Yeah, I've got quite a few stats here. I will warn you that it's up and down. So I'm just going to put you that in. I like to try and give a bit of balance, so it will be up and down. But yeah, I've got some head-to-head stats. Then I've got some stats about the players, some stats about the managers, and then some general stats about both teams. So the head-to-head record in the Premier League since 93-94, Spurs and Newcastle have played each other 54 times. Spurs have got a slight advantage here. Newcastle have won 22, drawn 8, and they've lost 24. So just a slight advantage there to Spurs in that fixture list. Although Marlon touched on earlier that Newcastle had a better record until a few years ago. There's always lots of goals in this fixture, 167 in total in the Premier League. Again, though, Spurs' slight advantage, 86 goals to Newcastle's 81. And also Spurs have got a better defensive record than Newcastle in the fixture. 15 clean sheets to 6 clean sheets for Newcastle. Talking about goals, there hasn't been a 0-0 at White Hart Lane between Newcastle and Tottenham since 1971 when Supermac was playing. So going back a long time there. Newcastle have got a better record in recent years at White Hart Lane or the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium than at St James's. They've won 10, they've drawn 3, and they've lost 16. 10 away wins, in fact, is Newcastle's best joint away record against any single opponent. But just touching on it again there, they've won 4, they've drawn 1, and they've lost 5 when they've played at Spurs in recent times, whereas at St James's, quite poor in comparison. 2 wins, 2 draws, and 6 defeats. And again, here's a happy stat for you. Newcastle's Premier League record, 22 wins in this fixture, is bettered only by the record against Aston Villa, 23 wins. So quite a good record, really, on the balance of play for Newcastle. The top goal scorer, moving on to players, no surprise here, is Harry Kane in this fixture. 8 goals in 14 games. Kane as well. He's been involved in 8 goals in the last 5 Premier League appearances with 3 assists as well as 5 goals. But his record at home against Newcastle, he's only scored 1 goal in 6 appearances. Callum Wilson for Newcastle, on the other hand, 2 goals in 8 games. And we've touched on Kieran Trippier, and we've touched on the previous show again in the build-up against Everton. Trippier has created more chances from set plays than any other player in the Premier League, 16. And he's created 4 or more chances in 3 games, different games already. And the last player to do that for Newcastle was Moussa Sissoko back in 2015-16, a player Marlon will know well as well. Anyhow,
by the way.
Anyhow, moving on to managers, his record against games he's managed against Tottenham, 11 games, he's won 1, he's drawn 2 and lost 8, so not really a great record against Spurs. Antonio Conte, on the other hand, he's managed 4 games against Newcastle, he's won 3 and he's lost 1. Some general stats here. Tottenham, we've touched on it earlier, Marlon touched on earlier. Tottenham have won 8 games in a row at home going back to the back end of last season, and a run that goes back to April when they lost at home to Brighton 1-0. They've scored 20 goals in those games, and they've conceded 5 goals. So they're going on. They're on fire. The football mightn't be great, but they're on fire at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham's record number of home wins in a row was set in 1987 when they won 14 games in the old Division 1. And that Premier League record is 11 wins in a row, which was set in 2017. So hopefully, Newcastle fans, again, will see that record won't be extended on Sunday. We don't want it stretching to 9 wins. Newcastle have got the best defensive record in the Premier League, which we've touched on as well earlier in the show. 9 goals conceded in 11 games, and they've only conceded 3 goals in the last 6 games. How good does that sound in the ear? And that rounds off the stats.
Wow. Love that. I love how you ended with that stat at the end.
Always end with a positive in Newcastle's favour, whether they're winning or losing or drawing.
Definitely.
Pete, we've got to actually make it. Since we're going on a positive, I'm going to bring this up now. I have to bring it up now, right? And that's off Johnny Tune for Life again. Keith, now you did well last week. No sit on the fence for your prediction tonight. And you know why? The first time you didn't sit on the fence, you got it bang on the nail on the head, mate. Like I said to Pete just before the kick-off, we would win 1-0 or 2-1 by the odd goal. But hats off, you got it 1-0 on the nose, mate.
Thanks very much. I suppose sitting on the fence, he means I didn't say draw 1-1, because that is my classic default with Newcastle.
But I'll tell you what, you get some love in the chat, man. Double O Stats of Legend. Always the big love the big introduction and the understated class that is Double O Stato. But Keith also wants to know, on a light-hearted note, he wants to know, do you drive a Bond bug, Keith?
I don't think I've quite worked up to the Aston Martin class yet. No, I haven't quite. Unfortunately, I haven't got up to those levels yet. Do you think True Geordie drives an Aston Martin?
Probably not fit it.
Yeah, I've got a way to go yet.
Just before we move on, I just want to say, Chris, obviously, Pete mentioned he was new in the chat earlier on. He's actually just subscribed to be a member of the channel as well, so much appreciated, Chris. We'll love the support as well, and thank you very much for considering becoming a member. Right, Pete, I know you love this bit, so go on and get cracking.
Yeah, definitely. As always, and I want to get Marlon's opinions on this. As always, we always do the old switcheroo into the tactics board. And as always, I always ask the opposition fan for their formation, their predicted starting lineup. I hope you guys can see that on the screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, look, Marlon, I've written your team down as you presented it, and I think I've got the formation in the structure right. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Spot on.
Okay, so look, I will always ask the opposition first. That is your team set out how you see it kind of being set out on Sunday. Where do you believe are the areas in which you can exploit Newcastle United? But equally, where do you think Newcastle could exploit you?
Good question. I would say if we're going to exploit you, it would be on that right-hand side with Fraser and Burn. Burn is more better as a centre back than a left back. But he's up against Royale, and we just don't know what Royale's going to turn up. He's good. He's good defensively, yeah, right. That's one thing I will say. He's very good defensively, but as an attacking person, he's not. He doesn't give us. So if we're going to get at you, it's going to be because Willock and Bruno are not defensive-minded, and Bentancur and Højbjerg will probably be the two that will go and support Kane and Son. And if it's anything like we were against Everton last week, that's where we're going to get the most joy, where we'll probably try it. But Burn will have to make a decision, and so will Trippier, if they're going to take Cess or Royale, or they're going to take Bentancur or Højbjerg, who's going to be pushing forward. And I just don't think Shelby will be able to handle it by himself in that middle. That's where I think if we're going to get the most joy, it will be there. I think Botman, it will be very interesting to see how he's up against and Harry Kane.
Yeah.
As the stat earlier that was pointed out, Harry Kane has scored many goals against Newcastle. So that's going to be an interesting pairing as well. But yeah, that's where I think Bentancur and Højbjerg will probably be the one that I think we're going to get the most joy out of it against Shelby. And that's probably where, if we're going to be winning the game, that's where we're going to win it. As for you lot, Fraser and Burn, as I said earlier, that's the side you need to go down. Even Almiron and even Trippier, to be honest. Cess is good for Son. He's good for Son, but defensively sometimes he can be found lacking. But Lenglet, to be honest, has played really well with Cess. A lot of Spurs fans won't like to hear that, but Perisic, it depends. If Perisic, I think he won't go with Perisic because he's played the last 2 games. Okay. So I think he's going to try and go for pace. And if he's going to go for pace, it has to be Royale and Cess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's more interesting on our part to see how we're going to do it. But Fraser, if he can get Royale and get some crosses into that box, it's our weakest side. Romero's not been on top of his game as well, especially if I know you guys didn't watch Man United. You would have probably seen Romero at one of his worst. So yeah, if Fraser and Wilson can do what they did at Bournemouth, then yeah, that's where I'll see most of your goals coming from. That's where you're going to get the joy and get against Spurs.
No, I think that's an interesting point. You talked about Royale from a attacking and a defensive point of view, in that he could exploit us, but we could exploit him on that side as well. Yeah, pace has been this continuous conversation with Burn on this left-hand side, in that he's had Anthony there, he's had Gordon there, Damari Gray. He seems to have come through it okay because we've not been losing matches, so it's not been the worst thing in the world. But again, it's something that we need to be aware of. Sessegnon will be interesting here. Trippier is so experienced as a player. It'll be an interesting battle there. But what is interesting from what you've said, before I get Richie and Keith in on this, is that you've talked about assessing on going forward and supporting Song in these kind of positions. So if Song's up here, he's positioning in the overlaps here. But what people forget is that we've got our current top scorer in the league, Almiron, who is lightning quick going the other way and loves to commit defenders this way. And he's just got this infectious work rate that just gets back and forth, literally for 90 minutes. He does not stop. He's just all action. And I think with Trippier's ability to find him in positions here, and he can put this ball into the channel, I think we're going to see a Sessegnon that's going to be kind of non-committal in terms of his attacks, because he's going to be worried about Almiron making those runs there. But it's an interesting situation. You are absolutely right. Kane and Botman, Botman dealt with Ronaldo and Rashford really well at Old Trafford. Richie made the point. He talked to Jamie, who we know quite well, who's a Man United fan living in Newcastle, and said how well we managed Man United as a team. Botman was a big part of that. So was Fabian Shaw. It'll be interesting to see how they get on as a battle there. Before I get Richie and Keith's thoughts on this, Newcastle's team. So this is my prediction of a Newcastle team. I think there's going to be 1 or 2 changes, not as many as we think. Could be wrong. I've just got a feeling Shelby's going to start. He hasn't played this season. He's had a bad hamstring injury, but he's been on the bench the last couple of games. We're looking at reintegrating him slowly but surely. I've just got a feeling we're going to get 50, 60 minutes out of him tomorrow. Sorry, not tomorrow, on Sunday, in this position here as this defensive midfielder to allow the likes of Bruno and Willock to go forward. Fraser, I think, might give Murphy a rest. But the rest of the team, I think, will stay the same, providing no injuries came about today and hopefully tomorrow in their final training session. That's just my opinion. But look, Richie, I'll come to you. From your perspective, do you agree with the team that I put on there? Would you change anything? And as well, as I asked Marlon, where do you think we win the game? And where do you think we could be exploited from our point of view from Tottenham?
Well, first of all, I think Yano's going to pretty much answer the question for you. And Yano says, how many times has Pete got our lineup right? I can't think of one. And I don't see it being right on Sunday either. Murphy and Longstaff will play. Right, well, on that one, I've got to disagree with you, I don't know a degree, because I agree. I think Fraser will start, because we had that conversation in depth last night in the review show. It's a shame that Alan Saint-Maximin's not fit, because I think he would tear Emerson Royal another one on Sunday if he was playing. Now, the thing I differ with is I don't think Shelvey will start. I think he'll still be on the bench. And I know it was mentioned in the press conference about Joe Linton. It was the first question he answered about obviously going off with that slight knock to the knee. I think that reply of Eddie Howe, as we know, some of the chatters have been saying it, we do know that Eddie Howe plays his cards close to his chest, can lie, tell a little bit white lies in these press conferences so it doesn't give stuff away. I think he was protecting Joe Linton there by not coming out and saying, do you know what? He had a shitter, basically, because he did. We discussed it. Both me and you said that last night in the review show. We thought he had a bad game. I think it was taking the flack off him and just saying, look, he had the strapping on, was carrying a knock. And then obviously we know when the tackle that he was on about where he got knocked the side knee was the one where he should have got the second yellow and got sent off. That's the place that Eddie Howe was saying. That's where he got the knock on the side of the knee, because he was so late on that ball. He was looking to stay on the pitch. I think we need him on Sunday in that middle of that park, and I still think he plays. And it wouldn't surprise me if Longstaff starts as well, because of that athleticism, as Eddie Howe mentioned as well, because of his work rate, how much he covers on the pitch. It depends on, obviously, you mentioned that Willock wasn't 100% on Wednesday night, obviously from that viral infection he had at the weekend. So that could be closer. So I still think Joe Linton will start, because I think we need him, especially with Højbjerg, Basuma, and Bentancur. I think it's going to be a physical battle in that middle of the park, and I think you just need Joe Linton in there, because realistically, Bruno wins a lot of his duels in the centre of the park because he's got such a good footballing brain. He reads where the ball's going to go, so he gets there half a yard before someone else. Whereas Willock and Longstaff aren't physical. They don't put their stamp in the middle of the park. I think that's why we need Joe Linton in there on Sunday. So half that back line picks itself. Good to see Marlon's thoughts on Dan Burn and believing they can get something against him. For me, we discussed it again last night, Pete. He's came against Anthony Gordon on the other night as well. And do you know what? He hasn't. Yes, he's not as quick as those people, but it's something that Michael Pormore actually mentioned in the chat. We'll bring it back up if we find the comment. But what you forget is he's 6'6". His stride is huge. It gets him out of so much trouble. It's unbelievable. You might think he's got lost a yard or something, but he's got it back straight away, because obviously he's not having to run with the ball to keep it under control. He can literally focus on getting back into that position, so he's defensively sound. So for me, I still like Bert left back. And to be fair, I think I said back four picks itself. Almiron being the most underrated player this season so far, most improved as well. We discussed that last night. Wilson, you have to play Wilson, unfortunately, because we don't have Isak at the minute. And if we want to cause problems to that back three of Romero, Longley, and Dyer, it has to be Wilson. I just think if you play Wood up there, it's going to be easy enough for one of those three just to mark about the game. So you need that movement. So, which we know we've discussed before on the channel numerous times about Wilson. He likes to make those runs in between the defenders. He's an instinctive striker that likes to get in and around the penalty spot and 6-yard box. And I don't believe, especially with Longley and Dyer, I don't think they're very good dealing with the movement sort of thing. If you've got someone static a bit like Wood, it makes it easy to defend, in my opinion. So you've got to play Wilson to cause them problems.
Okay, there's a lot I agree with you on that, and we'll get to that in a second. Marlon, I know you've got to go. You stayed a little bit longer than intended. I really appreciate your time. You've been an amazing guest, and we'd love to have you on again in the reverse fixture. But we're going to let you go, Marlon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Could you shout out your YouTube channel just before you go on where to follow you?
Yep. So A View from the South Stand TV. That's my YouTube channel. You can find me at Southview Coys on Twitter as well. Been absolute pleasure being on this channel, especially if you guys win on Sunday. Come over on Sunday around 7:45 and watch the meltdowns with some of the Spurs fans, and it's how I try and keep them calm. But no, it's a good listen, and it's getting a different perspective on different fans. I try and differentiate it every single week so we don't have the same people on, and you go from one extreme to another on things, but no meltdowns. There's no meltdowns. But good luck to you boys for the rest of the season. Yes, and I'd love to come on for the reverse fixture, but this has been a great channel. And everyone in the chat, please like and subscribe to this channel. It's been absolute pleasure being on today. But yeah, thanks everybody.
Top man.
Cheers, Bob. You've been a fantastic guest, mate. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Richie.
See you soon. Brilliant to have Marlon on. Absolutely spot on. Great guest. And we continue to bring these great guests to you on Loaded Mag NUFC. So keep tuning in as well. And look, we're not going to stop with the tactical debate. You made some really good points. You talked about Wilson occupying these centre backs and the movements in between. You've made some opinions, and I know you talked about one or two in the chat that have not agreed with me. Shock, it's the same ones that always don't agree with me no matter what I say. It's fine, not a problem. I'm only giving an alternative opinion. I could be wrong, and you know what? I actually hope I am wrong, because I hope we do go with the same team, because the same team that we played against Man United and Everton at this moment in time, for me, is the strongest team. The only reason I think we'll make some changes is because at what point does Eddie Howe make these changes? And I'll put this back to you guys, really. And look, Keith, I'll get your opinions on this. At what point do we make these changes? And this is the reason why they're kind of forced changes for me, with Shelvey coming in and getting some minutes and Fraser starting, because if he doesn't play or make changes, and the likes of Shelvey, Fraser, and maybe one or two others, Target, I've not even talked about, don't come into the team, when are they going to ever get into the team if they can't make a 3-game week? That's why I made those changes. But what do you think about that, Keith?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, Pete. You need to the fixture list that we've got coming up, the schedule. You need to get these players on earlier in the games. Really, hopefully Newcastle are in a stronger position and have an advantage, like a winning position in games to do that. But if they're in a strong position, like a couple of goals up in a game, then why not on the sort of 60th minute mark bring some of the players on, at least have 30 minutes in. I'm quite reluctant with a plan there about Shelvey being on as a starter, to come back on his first game and being there from a start in a game against the opposition like Spurs, the vein of form Spurs are in down at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That just worries me a bit. Bringing Shelvey back as your main sort of defensive, like midfield cover, but going on the basis of sort of Joe Linton being out. Hopefully it is Eddie Howe playing a bit of possum, and hopefully Joe Linton is involved. Well, remains to be seen. But going back to the original question, Pete, I would sort of think, if it's 0-0 or if it's level, and you need some fresh legs, why not bring them on in the 60th minute mark to change the game potentially? Whether that be Fraser, whether that be a Longstaff coming on as a substitute.
Yeah, this is what I'm struggling to kind of understand. And look, Richard, I'll come back to you with this, because I don't know how people may see this the way in which I asked the question. And look, Michael's put in the chat, and it's not related to this individual player in particular, but it's related to the topic that I'm going to raise. And he's put in the chat, what's the point of Paul Dummett? We are carrying a fair bit of dead wood, maybe literally there. and he's not wrong with Paul Dummett, because he ain't kicked a ball or even looked like being or playing any minutes so far.
He's injured again, apparently. So...
Well, there you go. And it's like, it begs the question, how does this go down if we get through, if we get through this 3 game week, and we get through and say we get a point or 3 at Tottenham. So we've come out with some really good points total out of these 3 games, but we haven't changed the squad. And then after that, we go to, a week in between games before we break up for the World Cup. Could that potentially cause some unrest from the likes of Fraser, from the likes of Shelvey? Maybe not so much Shelvey, but like Matty Target and 1 or 2 of those that maybe should have been knocking on the door, Lascelles even. Does that cause any issues there? Do you think from that?
For me personally, if I was a professional footballer, yes, I'd be gutted that I wasn't playing. But at the same time, I've also got to realise that the people that are in front of us have taken their chance, and you can't change it. You really, really can't. We literally discussed on Wednesday night, when you got the tickets off me, Pete, we were talking about the Everton game and the Spurs game, and we said, you were curious to what the thought the start lineup would be against Everton. And I would go with the same team, because you've got to play your strongest teams against the teams that you should be beating, which obviously we did. Now, and obviously make the changes on Sunday. However, looking at the result, the way that Spurs went at Man United on Wednesday night and how poor they were, you start to think, do you know what? If we actually played our strongest team, we can get something at Spurs on Sunday. It's not looking at it anymore like where, as you mentioned last night, Pete, Spurs isn't a free hit anymore. This is a game now where we could see what level we're at. Going to places like, we went to Liverpool, and to be fair, we were unlucky, very, very unlucky. 1, not to win the game because of that Isak's second goal would have completely changed that game if that had been given. And obviously then we know about how the game ended, and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. We've got to live with it. So we went there and, we gave them a game. We've had Man City at home, and bar Liverpool, we're probably the only team that's really given Man City a game this season. So we have to go a lot. I think we have to go and give them a go, especially when defensively they don't look great. I think that this formation that they've got, and to be fair, I was going to ask Marlo, obviously he's had to shoot, was, does he think this, obviously I know that this formation's now because of the injuries to Kulusevski and to Richarlison, so they've got to go with the fact, like 2 wing backs really, rather than the 3-4-3, which they've been playing the majority of the season. Has that really changed their tactics? Because that midfield, for me, there isn't much creativity in that midfield for them, which obviously we do have that creativity. And I still believe that if we have Joe Linton in there, we've got that creativity to create chances, especially against that back line. So for me, I've sort of shifted a little bit to go and play our strongest team again, Pete. And then you've got that full week to attack Villa. Rest them, give them a couple of days rest if needs be. I think, if you look at the change, I'd probably keep Fraser in there, if I'm honest with you, Pete. If I'm honest, I'd keep Fraser in there, and I'd bring Joel in back in as well.
I'll change it. I'll change it. The likes of Yano, Mr. Know-It-All. I'll put it in. That's fine. No change in the team. Let's leave it like that. Are you?
I think if I was to make one change, it would be Murphy, Fraser for Murphy. But that's it.
But to be fair, Murphy's probably one of the fittest players in the team. And actually, hasn't played as many minutes as maybe other players have in terms of, pre-season, back end of last season. He's generally a fit lad. He's very rarely injured. He just doesn't play enough football. So for me, he'd be probably ready to go again. So it wouldn't be down to tiredness that you'd play Murphy. It'd be down to just giving someone else an opportunity on that left.
Do you know why I'd play Fraser? Just it sort of backs up your point, because obviously Murphy is really fit, right? He's quick. Can you see Murphy? I think Murphy. If this is the game where Fraser's trickery, because obviously because he's 2 foot, he can go both ways. Okay, so he can attack Emerson Royal on both sides. He can attack him on his weak side and torment him, right? And then you can bring on Murphy, 65, 70 minutes when Fraser's ran him ragged, and then just tire him out with utter pace. afterwards, because there's nothing worse when you're knackered and you've been chasing yourself to have someone who's quick come on and go at you. That's possibly one of the reasons why I would switch it around the other way as well, Pete.
Yeah, that seems fair. Look, is there anything from you, Keith, that you would maybe change in this squad? You know, Richie's said one or two things that you pop up. I've changed the team basically to what it was that started the game against Everton. So that's how it is fitting right now. Would you change anything from that? Is there any other players that I've not got on the side? I've got Target, Fraser, Shelvey there on the sidelines. Is there anyone else that you would add to that maybe you would bring in to start the game if you had the choice?
I think Richie's just hit the nail on the head there with Fraser and the Murphy combination, really. I think this is the game for Murphy. I'd like to see Murphy start. And I'd like to see Fraser start and then Murphy come in the second half. Really, I think, I'd like to see sort of Fraser get a good run and link up with Wilson, like we're seeing a few seasons ago in that game against Everton at St. James's. I want to see that sort of link up, potentially chances coming in that way. And I'm certainly a bit more confident seeing Joe Linton start with Longstaff there in the midfield, as opposed to Shelvey. I think Shelvey's one maybe to come back and phase back in, maybe as a substitute in this game, and maybe next week in the game with Villa. That's a game where maybe we could, in that run up to the World Cup, maybe we could have a few more changes there. But I agree with Richie. You've got to try and play your best team to get something off Spurs, particularly away.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. I go back to the point that I mentioned on the review show with Everton, is that the one thing with Jacob Murphy is he's just got pace. He's got pace to burn. And on a big pitch at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, where you need to carry the ball forward, even to just take the pressure off the defenders, he gives you that. He might not give you the final ball, but he might win you a free kick or a corner or a throw-in just by the fact that he gets the ball and drives forward. And, one or two have mentioned in the chat that, Fraser, it doesn't look overly fit, as fit as Murphy. But what I do like about Fraser, and he did this so well against Everton, is that when he comes on later on in the game, I think he won 4 or 5 free kicks in a short period of time. And what he does, he wins those free kicks and he just slows down the game. He just slows down any momentum that is there for the opposition to build on, because he just wins. He's so intelligent. Shaw does exactly the same. You've got Wilson that does exactly the same, just wins free kicks and slows down the play. We're going to need that later on in the game. If we're still in the game, we're winning or we're drawing, or we're looking like we're going to pick something up, bringing Fraser on later on would probably be ideal in that situation. I just thought, Eddie Howe might look to maybe change one or two things around. But look, I've gone with Dan Burn, left back. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, all day long.
Do you think
all day long.
Target? Do you think Target shouldn't get a look in at all? I personally, I would go with Dan Burn. But does Target get any sort of a look in this game at Tottenham? Obviously, Richie, you've said all day long with Burn. What about you?
I think it's one of those, if depending on how he is fit, later on again, I'll bring him on like you did the other night, just to try and break the play up if Spurs are getting on top or something like that, and see what they make changes wise. Because for me, I still want to go back. You look at that picture at the end of the Everton game, that collective back five, right? They're just a complete. I know there seems to be this telepathy between them. They just know where they're all going to be, full stop, where they're going to be positioned and everything. And they just work. There's just the gel so well. It's just really, really good to see. And for me, I want that all time saying, don't change away the line. Don't change that back five. For me, unless an injury comes in, don't change it. With the frugalest defense in the league for a reason, and those back five is the reason.
Yeah, definitely. Would I said Spurs defense isn't full of confidence, high press, and there's more than one mistake to be made by them. You're not wrong. Even Everton caused them problems and probably should have scored a couple of goals at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. If you've got a Wilson, a Murphy that know how to press high, and Almiron that just runs all day, he's like a Duracell battery, he never stops. And then you've got the likes of maybe Bruno, Willock, Joe Linton, depending on who's going to start running at you and pressing you really hard up the pitch. I do think we could cause them problems. I really, really do. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how Tottenham react to that, because what we are doing this season, I don't think any team have been prepared for. They know that we work hard, but I don't think they've kind of understood until they've been in the game how hard we work in terms of that high press and how we give them so little time up the pitch. We're willing to sacrifice the ball in and behind. So what they will do, they'll press up really, really high into the fullbacks, the goalkeeper, the centre-backs. And yeah, there might be an outboard in between those lines. But what we're prepared to do as a team is prepared to make that run back. What you'll see from other teams, like Man United did, is that when we play that ball between the lines, the Fernandes and one or two other players, they'll stop running because they'll think, oh, it's not my job anymore. When Murphy makes that press high up and the ball gets played in and behind him, he sprints back into position. Almiron's the same. Bruno's the same. Longstaff's the same, or Joe Linton, whoever it is. We work so hard off the ball. And I just think Tottenham are going to be in for a bit of a surprise because I don't think they're going to expect it. I really don't. And I think if we get an early goal, we are really going to be in the box seat in this situation. But anything to add before we move on?
Not really, to be fair. I think it's, you look. I don't think we can see a lot of changes to the team unless you have Isak or Maxi back. I think you'll probably see a set lineup really until the Palace game in the Cup. You might see a few changes in the Palace game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, won't be surprised in that at all. Michael said, watch the match cam video the club posted for the Everton game. It really shows the intensity and speed we are playing with going forward. Not surprised other teams. I find it hard to cope with. Absolutely spot on. I really, really do think that that's the case. Yano thinks that Lewis may play a part on Sunday. Not quite sure. I think he's been primed and prepared for a loan move in January. Jordan 2 for Life said, hope ASM is fit. I think ASM will be fit for Villa. I do. I think Eddie Howe has talked about a minor tweak, a minor setback. I actually think he's probably training at the moment. I don't have any information on that. I think he's probably training at the moment, not with a full team, with a view to next week being back in the full team fold, and potentially being primed for being on the bench for that game. I've just got a feeling on it. Nothing concrete, but we'll see. We'll see how that works.
I don't know if you saw the press coverage, but Eddie Howard said he hadn't seen much from this week because obviously they've been focusing on the games all week because he'd been training by himself. But obviously, next couple of days he'll see get an update on his status, and hopefully he's able to start training with the boys next week, and then hopefully be in the match day squad for the Villa game.
Yeah, what he said was he's been working really hard behind the scenes with the physios and stuff to be fit and available. I think ASM is going to want to be involved before we break up for the World Cup. He's going to want to be able to at least leave his mark to let fans know that he's still there and he's still at that level. He's not going to want to let it lie until back end of December. So I'm convinced we're still going to see him. So we'll see how that works out. But always good to talk tactics, always good to have different opinions. This is what it's all about. We put a team on there. People see it differently. People see it the same. Marlon's perspective was very interesting in terms of how they think they can break us down, but also how we can expose them. So very, very interesting from that point of view. But before we get to final predictions, I think, are there any questions in the chat that we can throw out there for all of us, really?
I'll obviously have a look. There's a couple that we had earlier on about I wanted to ask, well, I didn't realise he had to go early, but it was more because obviously they go do the situation with the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium of the naming rights to see what his thoughts are on renaming. I think it's a little bit easier renaming a new stadium rather than one that's already established, which St James's Park is. So it was just to be able to get his thoughts on that. Obviously, we've all had our thoughts on that going forward over recent weeks and months and stuff. They also, Michael Pomar was a great one. I didn't get a chance to, but obviously I can get you, Keith and Pete's views on this. Why do you think Spurs let Kieran Trippier go?
Did he have a personality conflict at the time with Pochettino? I'm just wondering. I'm trying to cast my mind back to the sort of 2018 Champions League final, that sort of time, wasn't it? When he, or just after it, wasn't it? Or soon after that, when he went to Atletico.
I think it was before. I think it was before the Champions League final. I think they'd had a bit of a fallout. And I think after the Champions League final, I think it was Posh that wanted to go in a different direction. And Trippier was, I think, happy to leave at that point. I think Atletico Madrid were quite interested in him before the Champions League final. And I think he just took up the option to go there. But yeah, to be fair, and I think we spoke to Fouad about this even last season about Trippier when we were being linked with them, and around that time, a lot of people were asking for Trippier to be out to move on. I think the fans were happy for him to move on at that point, and I think he took up the option. But boy, would they need him now.
Yeah, totally agree. Michael also brings up another fantastic comment as well. It's amazing to say that the 1-0 loss to Everton last season was the only time that we've lost to a non-Big Six team in 2022. We've started to get results against the Big Six now too. Another big test on Sunday. Would you agree with that, Michael? Sorry, Keith, sorry.
Absolutely. What a great start that is from Michael there. And a great point.
Is he pulling you because you missed that one, Keith? Do you reckon?
No. I just think it's one of those stats which and points which shows how far we've came and what a good year the calendar year 2022 has been. We certainly made up for it on Wednesday night, didn't we, to get that revenge against Everton? But I mean, again, the other part of the point as well, Newcastle have started to get results against the Big Six. Now, I was complaining about this a few months ago on away days when we played Arsenal. Just before that game, I said, when are Newcastle going to do that next step and start getting results against the Big Six? Turned around and got a 2-0 result and battered Arsenal. And they've taken that into this season as well, getting a result against Man United and Man City, getting a point each off them. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully they're going to carry it forward again on Sunday, getting a result against Tottenham. Yeah,
I think you also got to obviously they mentioned about the Everton defeat is the only one up inside the so-called Big Six who've got a win against us. You also the fact that we've only lost 2 games at St James's Park, full stop this season. One against Liverpool, towards the end of the season. The other one's Cambridge United in the FA Cup before we started on that run. And
I was there.
Yeah, there. So it's your fault, Keith.
I was there. I was at the Gallagher, and I was getting back to my seat when Newcastle went and got their second goal, which was chalked off. So I'm saying that's what covered it for me. Newcastle should have won that game. There were two. Yeah. They should have won 2-1, but the referee, there was no VAR on that day. The referee just decided to chalk both of them off. So
yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? You take that. To be fair, you know what? It's one of those things that probably made Newcastle as well, because obviously
it was a catalyst, wasn't it, in a funny way, Richie? Yeah. Because shortly after that, they had the winter warm weather training away, and they seemed to bond and gel. And then they came back and they were a totally different team, and they got that result at Leeds United, didn't it? And that seemed to really spark them towards the end of the season.
I think the thing we can link back to Trippier as well is, there was one of his first experiences of St James's Park. To have it against Cambridge United in the FA Cup with the capacity that we still had, the atmosphere that we still had, and he was shocked by that. And he sort of took that on as part of his mantle when he's telling all the people who are, when people are trying to be attracted to the club, and also when he's, that leadership when he's spread it around the rest of the squad as well. things like that resonated on him on his first experience at James Park against Cambridge United in the FA Cup. It's helped build everything that's gone forward at St James Park. So since then as well, so it's really good. It's good to say on that. Yano just wants to say that he hopes that our asswipe, that's Andy Hinchcliffe, isn't commentating this weekend. To be fair, I don't think he will, because it's the Super Sunday 4:30 kickoff, so it's probably going to be Gary Neville or Jamie Carragher more than likely for that one, I'd say. Marlon's actually nipped at the chat. He says, big shout out to everyone and thanks for having me on. I really, really enjoy it. So that's nice to hear as well. That's pretty much the ones I've got come on here, unless anyone's put them on since we've been talking. So I don't know where you want to go next, Pete, unless there's anything there you can say.
No, I mean, look, I think Mark Todd asked about Lodi, the left back we were linked to Nottingham Forest loan. Anyone know what he's been playing like? And to be fair, Yano's he's been awful and is now injured. Did we miss a trick, or did we kind of dodge a bullet with regards to Lodi? Because I for one was shocked that he went to Forest, but he looks like he's been in really, really poor form since he went there.
Do you know what? I think if he had come to Newcastle, I don't think he would have been as bad as what he's been at Forest. You've got to remember they've got pretty much a brand new 25-man squad.
Yeah.
But he also has that relationship with Kieran Trippier, and there's not a cat in hell's chance that Kieran Trippier would let him rest on his laurels and think he's made it because he's in the Premier League. Anything like that, I think you'd see a completely different Renan Lodi if he was at Newcastle.
I don't know if we would have seen a complete different Lodi. I think we would have seen a more attack-minded left back, because that's his game. But if you're going to Forest that are not expected to win every game and you're expected to be more defensively minded, you're not going to get your best Renan Lodi every week. You're not going to get what you actually bought him for, is to be attackingly very strong and to be that person that arrives late, overlaps, whips balls into the box. That's what he was about. Even when he was linked with us early on in the summer, we would talk about it on the Fully Loaded Transfer Show. It was said quite convincingly that he is an attacking fullback. He's not a defensive fullback. And he just doesn't fit the Nottingham Forest mould. But it was very clear, the fact that he's gone to Forest on loan, that he wanted out of Atletico Madrid. He wanted to play in the Premier League. But I do agree. I don't think he would have been as bad as he was at Forest, but I do think there are elements to his game.
I think if you think about it, you've said it, you've nailed it on the head there, Pete. He's an attacking fullback. He's not getting much attacking at Forest.
No, he's not.
You just thought you'd seen a hell of a lot more of him at Newcastle, because we've been a front foot attacking side this season. So I do think you would say.
I was going to say, would we have been as good defensively?
No, he would have suited us going forward, but not defensively. He sort of moulds what Trippier is on the right-hand side without the defensive capabilities of Trippier. So you realistically now, if you want to go like for like with Trippier, you're going to have to do some scouting, because there's not many can do both like he does on the left-hand side.
No, I would agree. As well, we've got Tim Norman in the chat. Welcome, Tim. I don't think I've seen you on the chat too often. So if you haven't already, click the like, click the subscribe. Welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC.
It's a great question as well, though. Are we the best team to watch in terms of intensity?
Keith, what do you think?
Well, much improved, aren't we? In particular, to where we were certainly in January. We've got a lot more options, because we're a team that was solely reliant on ASM previously, weren't we? Now there's a lot more attacking options, and we've got a more rigid, strong defence, which is pushing forward, really building confidence from that area. Definitely, I think we're right up there. We're surprising a lot of people this season.
I think the surprising thing about is how intense we are, and we still haven't got Isak and ASM involved much this season. I don't know what you think, Pete, but how good could potentially Newcastle be where we've got a fully fit squad?
Our squad is the best outside of that traditional top six, in my opinion. That the squad of players, and you've touched on Isaac, ASM. Shelby hasn't kicked a ball this season for us in the Premier League. You know, you throw those three players in to any of those other teams, a Brentford, a West Ham, a Brighton, those teams that are getting bigged up alongside us that are outside that traditional top six. You throw any of those three players into that team and they are being bigged up even further. We've missed those three players. Those three players have barely kicked a ball for us and we're still sitting in sixth spot. We get those players back and we have a sustained period of all of those players to choose from. There is no reason why we can't be in the top six or top seven, certainly asking the question, being in a Europa Conference League spot at the very least. There is no reason why we cannot. But we are, with those players to choose from, we have the best squad outside of that traditional top six. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think we'd probably need. There's about three spaces which really need to improve. It's interesting what Michael Pobars has put in there as well. Obviously, our defense is fantastic, right? It's probably partly down to the reason what they said there that the majority of them are 30 plus bar Botman. So that goes to show the experience and leadership in that back line. Obviously, we discussed it last night that we're looking for. Do you think in the summer we'll go for a younger right-sided centre back to back up Shaw, and also which Michael's mentioned there as well, but also at the full back stage as well, because obviously it'd be the perfect time to bring a young right back in to learn off Trippier while he's still playing, and bring him on so there's a natural progression on that side as well, but also on the left hand side as well, because obviously we've got Byrne who's playing left back, but he's not. He's not the Trippier on the left hand side. If you know what I mean, like I mentioned earlier.
At this moment in time, there's only one right back I want to bring in as an option. We move Manquillo on, which I expect to move on. Emil Kraft, I expect to move on. Although it might be difficult because he'll only just come back from an injury. But there's at this moment in time, there's only one right back that I can see in the Premier League that I would take as a replacement or as a backup to Trippier, and that's Kyle Walker-Peters at Southampton. Hugely impressed with him. He's injured now and he's going to be out for a while. I think he's actually going to miss our game in a week or so when we go to St Mary's. Kyle Walker-Peters.
That's a shame.
Yeah, shame. But he's got a bit of a hamstring injury. But he's why Tottenham.
I hadn't considered him, but I'm going to turn on. I think that's a fantastic shout because he'll already have a relationship with Trippier from his Spurs days.
Yeah, they know each other. Why they let him go? I haven't got no idea. No idea. He has been for me one of the highest performing right backs in the Premier League, and I love the guy. On the 12-man podcast, I went on it a few weeks ago, and they asked us to put our mixed 11 in. And I didn't put him in the end. I think I went for Castagna at left back and Trippier at right back because Trippier is the best performing right back in the Premier League, in my opinion. So there was no way he was going to beat him for that. But I really wanted to put him in the team because I'm just so impressed with him. Even from last season when we went at St Mary's, he destroyed us for 50 minutes on that left-hand side. He was playing left back. He wasn't even playing right back in his preferred position. He was playing left back and he destroyed us. And I've watched him ever since and he's been absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Anthony Robinson, he's a left-sided fullback.
No mentions that on the left side. But do you know what? Johnny Two for Life's got a fantastic shot. I was actually glad he wasn't playing the other night for Everton. But I've been really impressed with this young lad from what I've seen Nathan Patterson when he was at Everton.
We're not going to get him out of Everton, though. This is the problem. Like it's the same with Onana. I would love Onana as our City midfielder. Onana would be the perfect, and I said it last night. Onana. We both did, didn't we? We both went on about Onana last night. Yeah. He was fantastic. Brilliant. He was their best player on Wednesday night. He was their only player on Wednesday night. He was the only player that turned up. Onana would be perfect in that sitting role to allow Bruno, Willett, Joe Linton, whoever plays in those number 8s to push forward. The problem is is that just like Nathan Patterson, who actually we kind of balked at, and I know Chris and me kind of talked about it as well, and we kind of like laughed at the fact that they paid so much for him and he's barely kicked a ball. He's actually a decent right back. I would say decent. I wouldn't say he's amazing. He's decent. He's had a good start, you know, when he's played a regular number of games. The problem is that you're not going to get him out of Everton. Not for cheap anyway. You're going to pay big money.
You might if Johnny 2 for Life things comes up and says they get relegated.
I honestly, I don't think they will.
I don't think they will.
It's really weird to say because they can't hit a barn door, they can't score a goal, but Everton have just got this knack of getting so lucky and getting points on the board. But you look at a lot of teams around. You look at Southampton, are not playing well. You look at Leicester that are struggling. You got Forest that are struggling and right down there. Wolves are in and out in terms of performances. There are so many down there below Everton that I think they will just scrape. Whereas
I don't think they're going to get. I don't think they're going to get sucked in this season, Everton.
No,
for that reason, I think they're good. Forest are just having a night. Forest are just having a nightmare.
Yeah, I think Everton, as we mentioned last night, are defensively so much solid now with Cody and Tarkovsky. They're just old school centre halves, and like that's why Nathan Patterson slotted in quite well when he came in, because he had that leadership alongside him to guide him, and obviously he's got Seamus Coleman as a backup for him, who obviously is really experienced in that position as well. So I think that's why we saw a good start from him. But it's another reason why I don't think Everton will go down. But Michael Palmer, I don't know if obviously I'm conscious of the time, Pete, so it might be a good one to finish on this. It's Michael Palmer's question again, which is when do we think we will sign a big player currently playing most weeks from a big, we'll say the so-called Big Six club, thinking along the lines of obviously from Sterling, went from Man City to Chelsea type thing. So, Keith, I'll start with you on that one first.
I think maybe 18 months. I think another 18 months of building, perhaps, before I could even think of seeing one of the top six doing business with us, really, for a big name signing.
Pete?
I'll be honest with you. I don't see it. I don't see us going to the top six and getting a big name signing. I don't. I see us continuing to buy those players around the 26 mark at highest in terms of age, and developing them and making them into a top player at Newcastle. I don't see us making that. Dan Ashworth referred to it. He said, you know, if we're making big money signings at that level, you know, beyond the Alexander Isak, which I think at a top six team, if you're going to take one of their better players away from a top six team, you're paying more than 60 million. And Dan Ashworth said in his interview, if we're making signings like that, then he's not doing his job right. So it doesn't
seem to fit the model, does it? Really, in this current state of play, it doesn't. The idea that Newcastle would do business certainly in the next 12 months with a top six, it doesn't seem to fit.
I think even further. I think 24 months. I think even beyond that. I just don't see it. You don't bring Dan Ashworth in. And look, we talked about it when we were looking at a director of football, sporting director, whatever you want to call him. Like when we were linked with so many others, the one thing that I talked about was like Michael Marlo from Chelsea, for example, and we had Dan Ashworth, and there was one or two others, Luis Campos, who's now at PSG. You look at each one of them, and each one of them has a different blueprint in terms of how they build their teams and within their clubs. And it all depends on which one you bring in, which will depend on which and how you develop your club. Now, Dan Ashworth is not going and spending an extravagant amount of money on players to bring them in. He's not built like that. You look at Brighton and the money that they pay for the players that they've brought in and how successful they've been. Very, very limited. Michael Marlo is very different. They spent big money on young players to get into Chelsea, to then develop them and eventually sell them on for even more money. Luis Campos was very similar to Dan Ashworth, brought young players in, developed them from within, but the young players were always from their own country. So whatever country they were in, France, wherever, he would bring them in from their own country and develop them as homegrown players. Dan Ashworth is very similar to a point, but he is one that doesn't spend a lot of money, so I don't see it. And he said, if they're spending that sort of money on bringing those players in, then he's not doing his job right. So I just don't see it happening, because I don't think he's going to be one that is going to necessarily sanction those sort of deals. So I see more of at the maximum, the Alexander Isak's, the 60 million type signings. I see that type of signing at 25, 26 years old. Or it'll be a lot less. We've been linked with Andre Santos from Vasco da Gama. That type of player, we might spend a lot of money on him, 25 million. He's been mooted. We might spend a lot of money on him, but guaranteed that when he comes into the first team after a season, he'll probably be worth double that. And that's the type of risk they'll take, not the 100 millions, not the 70, 80 millions. That's just my opinion.
I think that's exactly the prime example of that is Garang Kowal. 300,000 of rumored to have paid for him.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, he comes in and he sets the world light, fantastic. He doesn't. You know, you can develop him, load him on, possibly make some money off him. Do you know what I mean? So 300,000, it's nothing. It may as well be a free transfer, really.
There seems to be a lot more forward planning, doesn't there, with the transfers and acquisitions that they're making. I mean, they'd long been after Kieran Trippier, and Botman was a long running transfer as well. There seems to be a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Call came out the blue, but it was a good one, because at least in the bad old days would be scrapping around in January, going down a list and in the previous regime. But now they're actually making these signings, and you can see a plan with them. You can see him going out to a club, getting some experience, coming and bedding back into Newcastle. And he's already ingratiating himself and making the right moves as well with the fans and everything as well. He's getting to know the club, build up his education before he goes out and comes back.
Yeah. Really. Doug the Toon has said, we'll buy what we think we need, not big paychecks, which I agree with. That's what it's about. That's what it's about with Newcastle.
You're not going to get big paychecks until we get Champions League football regularly. End of.
100%. We won't break the £150,000 a week mark in terms of wages until we're playing Champions League football. We'll get those players in that command that sort of fee, but not until then. But yeah, that's my opinion. But look, we'll get to the end of the show. Gone way longer than I expected, but you know what? It's been a fantastic chat and a great show. Marlon, especially, has been absolutely on point. But just before we leave, I think it's always important that we recognise our sponsors. So, of course, great to have Shy Burns a part of our Lodi family. www.shyburns.com for all your mental health support. Massive support with all things mental health, and lots of gear, which we've already shown you way before, and continue to do so with the away days prints and other Loaded Mag prints as well. So get involved with everything that Simon puts out to us. A fantastic sponsor of the show. As well as that, Pins and Prints. Thank you for your continued support. There was a fantastic print that Lisa managed to get, which she put on there on Twitter, and showed that a fantastic goal of Miguel Almiron. And I'm sure there'll be many more as well. I wonder if there'll be a Miguel Almiron against Everton print coming out. Let's wait and see. But some fantastic pins and prints there for you to check out. As well, Marty from Machine House. Again, if you haven't checked out Marty from Machine House's gear, please do. Always coming up with new different types of designs and different outfits, tops, hoodies, various different things that you can get involved in. Marty, again, as Pins and Prints, fantastic sponsor of the channel. And of course, Dean, who's been in the chat. The Geordie Rise, fantastic gear as always. Lots and lots to choose from. On this particular selection, we've got Oogie, who we always promote, who's always been promoting the gear. Lots of other things available as well. Dean, hope you're well. Spoke to you earlier. Glad to see there's some positivity on your recovery, and fingers crossed things continue to move in the correct manner. And of course, we cannot go away without saying welcome to our new sponsor, Russ, the radiatorshed.com. So make sure, if you haven't already, Keith is in the doghouse, he's in the prison right now. Yeah, get in. Massive thanks to Russ and his continued support with us. Obviously new to the channel, but in terms of a sponsor, but he's been supporting us for a long time now in the chat. And of course, a massive sponsor to Loaded Mag NUFC. As it says, the Radiator Shed are a northeast-based company with a century of leading industry knowledge at your disposal. They cover most regions in the UK and are building associations with Age UK and mental health charities. Delivery direct is included in the price to mainland UK. They provide top quality materials made from plate steel, providing longevity. All designed and manufactured in Italy. Aluminium rads are very environmentally friendly and are perfect for heat source pumps. They offer a home survey service and will install if required. So if you haven't already seen the quality, the Fitz Revere type radiators, fantastic quality, as you can see from the pictures here. And you've got the Hampstead option as well, which is also very good quality. And they have different types of designs, and the multi-set raw is another option too. And it almost looks black and white, I've got to be honest, from that picture there, which would be amazing if it was. But there's lots and lots of great options there from Russ and from the Radiator Shed. So welcome to Russ from the Radiator Shed. Great to have you on board.
We'll have to say, Pete, we'll have to ask them whether they do a black and white option to go with the black one, to go with the white walls. Would be class, that, wouldn't it?
I tell you what, they'd sell out. There's no doubt about it. There'd be lots of people interested. And look, from all of our sponsors, and there's been a couple of new members as well. We did say once we hit that 100 mark of memberships, which we're not far away. I think we must be like 3 or 4 away from being
under 5, mate. Under 5.
Yeah. So we're very close to getting those 100 members. So once we hit those 100 members, we'll be triggering some sort of a giveaway or some sort of recognition to all of our members from the Loaded Mag family. So if you're not a member, click in and get involved. And as I said to Solo earlier on in the show, we've had a couple of memberships come our way. You can't do it by mobile phone, so you have to do it by laptop. And it just takes literally under 5 minutes to do it. So easy and simple. When it comes to the member section, you click the blue for the join, $1.99 a month, and you become a member of the Loaded Mag family. And whilst you're there, click the likes and subscribes. We're on our way to 5K. We are continuing to build slowly but surely, but doing it the right way, doing it through good content, doing it through engagement in the chat with the likes of everyone that's in the chat tonight. We are doing it the right way, and that's the only way we'd want to do it. And we're getting our subscribers coming slowly but surely, and we appreciate every single one of you. So if you haven't already, click that subscribe, come and join the channel, and click the like for tonight's show. Because it's been a great one, that is for sure.
See, Pete, it's exactly what you said. We're building it the right way, like the team is. Of
course, slow and steady, but it is done, like I say, the right way, and it's done in a way that is respectful to us as a channel and to you, the viewer. But look, before we go, quick round of predictions. Richie, what do we think is going to be come what? 6:30, 7 o'clock on Sunday evening?
I think we'll get something on Sunday. And I think I've probably got to agree with Doug the tune here. I don't think 2-2. I think it'll be a score draw though. And I think, do you know what? I think Spurs will be lucky. This is the one thing that scares me about Spurs. they seem to get penalties for nothing. And I've just got a feeling they're going to get a penalty on Sunday. And that's what's going to take to break our back four down at the minute. So I'm going to say 1-1.
1-1. Interesting. Keith, I'm interested to know Keith's prediction. What have we got for you? What have we got for us this week, Keith?
Well, there's two lines of thought for this game. One of them is that Conte has, he has the team fired up. He's probably been putting them through hell after that performance against Man United. In some respects, the game against Man United and the result was the worst thing that happened in Newcastle, really. But I mean, they're missing a couple of players as well, aren't they? Really, Spurs. There's two lines of thought. My head says it could be a narrow 2-1 win to Spurs, but given the fact that Newcastle have been playing so well, right, and that Spurs haven't been played a team like Newcastle at White Hart Lane, the Tottenham Hotspur season, this season, I think this could be a 1-1. I agree with Richie. We could actually get something out of the game, but that is again with a caveat that Joe Linton's in the middle of the park. Joe Linton's in the middle of the park, and there's no VAR drama, because that could spoil things as well. I don't want any more VAR drama like there was against Liverpool at Anfield. So I think they could get something with Joe Linton in the middle of the park and no VAR drama.
Interesting. I'm going to go 2-1 Newcastle. I'm going to stay positive. I was going to go 1-1. But the fact that you boys have already stuck to the 1-1, I'm going to go a little bit more positive. I think we could nick a win. Why not, eh? Why not? We've come through the test at Old Trafford. We've won quite comfortably at Everton. Why not go all out for it and get that win? But that's just my prediction for the game at the weekend. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone in the chat's been amazing, as always. Welcome to our new members and our new followers and subscribers. Keep looking out for many more shows to come. There will be more. There's no doubt about it. And got some more shows coming up very, very soon. He does need to be pulled down. Join the team for life. You are absolutely right. But we have a reaction show coming on Sunday evening after the Tottenham games. So hopefully we are jumping for joy at 3 points in the bag for Newcastle United. But let's wait and see. But again, those in the chats, the mods, absolutely fantastic. Those in the chat as well, all your questions for Marlon and for us tonight, much appreciated. We've gone way above and beyond what we expected to do tonight as a show, but it's been 100% worth it. You all take care. Have a fantastic weekend, and let's pray for 3 points. And of course, we do love playing away. You take care, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Enjoy your week.